Good evening. I'm Blake Howe. I teach music history in the College of Music and Dramatic Arts, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about the music at our concert tonight. Let's begin at the end, an end that seeks a new beginning. In Death and Transfiguration, composer Richard Strauss designs his own demise, his own confrontation with death, but also offers a glimpse into an ethereal, limitless afterlife. Strauss calls this work a tone poem, a poem spoken through tones. He uses music to tell a very specific story, one that Strauss himself explained in a revealing letter. He writes of an artist, now sick, lying in bed, asleep with heavy, irregular breathing. You'll hear some shuddering in the cellos. Friendly dreams conjure a smile on the features of the deeply suffering man, and just for a moment the music will seem pleasant and enchanting. But he wakes up, once more racked with horrible agonies, his limbs shake with fever, painful shrieks from the winds, violent dissonances from the strings. This is music that never shies away from its own ugliness. The sick man reminisces. His childhood passes before him, the time of his youth with its strivings and passions, and then, as the pain already begins to return, there appears to him the fruit of his life's path, the conception, the ideal which he has sought to realize, to present artistically, but which he has not been able to complete, since it is not for man to be able to accomplish such things. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. I know I have. An artistic idea so brilliant as an abstraction in your mind turns banal as soon as you speak it, compose it, paint it, or write it down. What is boundless in one's imagination becomes circumscribed in the real world. And so Strauss's dying man peers past the limits of the physical universe. The hour of death approaches. The soul leaves the body in order to find, gloriously achieved in everlasting space, those things which could not be fulfilled here below. The strings play a gorgeously arched melody. It had appeared as a fragment before, but now it gloriously resounds in its entirety. Like this painting by Eugène Carrière, Strauss's Death and Transfiguration explores the fluidity between worldly and otherworldly realms. It's a musical tale about physical death and spiritual transfiguration, but it's also an allegory about art, the frustrations of writer's block, of inadequate rough drafts, yielding to an ecstatic breakthrough of creativity, the realization of one's artistic ideals. Death and transfiguration, impasse and breakthrough, banality and creativity. Strauss begins with a death, an ending, but ends with a new, transfigured beginning. Now, before this rather heavy main course, there are two appetizers. Even if you're not familiar with the Italian composer Nino Rota, you've probably heard his music. That's from The Godfather, of course, and it's one of over 100 film scores that Rota composed over the course of his life. All the greatest Italian film directors sought his music. Luchino Visconti, Edoardo da Filippo, Franco Zeffirelli, and, most notably, Federico Fellini, who called Rota, quote, the most precious collaborator I have ever met. They worked together on 32 films. Rota also composed concert music, some operas, a few symphonies, and several remarkable concertos, including the Concerto for Trombone, which you'll hear this evening. Composed in 1966, the Concerto for Trombone shares the same decade with some of Fellini's greatest films, La Dolce Vita, 8½, Juliet of the Spirits, Fellini Satyricon. And like those films, Rota's concerto follows its trombone protagonist through a series of peculiar, eccentric episodes in offbeat, slightly surreal settings. There's the earnest first movement with its incessant sputtering of a clipped motive, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Then the soaring, aspirational second movement. You, like Marcello Mastroianni, might feel like you're flying. And then the quirky, offbeat third movement. And when I hear it, I can't help but think of that impromptu circus that boisterously concludes the film 8½. There aren't many great trombone concertos out there, but Nino Rota's is certainly one of them. Hanna Beloglavitz, assistant professor of trombone here at LSU, will be our featured soloist. And now, finally, the beginning. A fanfare signals the start of something, a ceremony, a festival, or, as is the case this evening, a concert. Mara Gibson's Fanfare for Orchestra grabs our attention through its unique fusion of different musical traditions. Some of the fanfare's components are familiar, some might be new. Stitched together, they create a vibrant, innovative musical tapestry. While composing, Gibson was inspired by the images of building blocks, tinker toys, and kaleidoscopes. Her stylistic allusions like fragments of colored glass, endlessly rotated and reflected to create new shapes, new patterns, new configurations. The instruments on stage are all traditional to the Western classical orchestra, but rather than playing the arched lyrical melodies we might expect from them, the orchestra instead imitates the sounds of non-Western percussion, especially West African drumming, in which a standard rhythmic pattern repeats over and over again. Our experience of this pattern changes as additional drummers playing new, slightly different rhythms gradually join and depart the ensemble. For example, here is the music of the Adowa, a dance popular among the Akan people of Ghana. Gibson also cites the influence of Eastern African music, namely the music of Uganda. This Bagandan instrument, the amadinda, is a kind of giant xylophone. It's usually played by 3 musicians, each introducing a theme that interlocks or amplifies with another player. The second player enters. And the third player. Gibson modeled her fanfare on this procedure, but here each section of the orchestra, strings, winds, brass, they play the role of one amadinda player, interlocking and interweaving its motives with those of other sections. For her pitches and harmonies, Gibson borrowed from yet another musical tradition, Javanese gamelan. A gamelan is an ensemble popular in Indonesia, prominently featuring metallic percussion instruments like those shown here. They tune not to the major or minor scales familiar from Western classical music, but to the slendro and pelok, 2 collections of pitches that serve as the basis for music that sounds like this. For her fanfare, Gibson adapts two scales from the Javanese tradition, a 5-note scale, and a 7-note scale. So the orchestration of Gibson's fanfare is European, its rhythms are Ghanaian, its form and structure are Ugandan, and its pitches and harmonies are Javanese. In her notes, Gibson writes that this work is about layering, transition, gradation, and what she calls the in-betweens. We might think of the ways in which Gibson's fanfare resides in between various cultures and musical traditions, not wholly one thing, but many things. And you might listen for the ways in which Gibson's music is as much about process as it is about product. How, through slight changes in an otherwise perpetual repetition, she develops new themes, gradually adding layer after layer of sound. As inspiration, Gibson cites the art of Robert Delaunay, whose geometric patterns repeat even as their colors and shadings change. Or we might think back to that kaleidoscope, how the perpetual rotation of its cylinder always creates something new, how it never arrives at its destination, but is always in a state of becoming. Mara Gibson's fanfare continues LSU Symphony's Year of Women in Music, in which every concert features at least one work by a woman composer. But tonight's performance is also an opportunity for the College of Music and Dramatic Arts to feature one of its newest faculty members. Beginning this year, Mara Gibson is visiting assistant professor of composition at LSU. She comes to us via the University of Missouri, Kansas City, where she taught for a number of years, and via the MacDowell Colony, a prestigious foundation that has supported some of the very best artists, musicians, and writers of the past 100 years. So, 3 compositions this evening. Last up, Richard Strauss's Death and Transfiguration. Before that, Nino Rota's Concerto for Trombone. But let's begin at the beginning with Mara Gibson's Fanfare for Orchestra. Thank you and enjoy the performance.